Hello YouTube and welcome to my X55 HOTAS review video. Now this has been delayed for a little while and I'm having to use my iPad today as opposed to my normal tripoded camcorder, which is much more stable. So this is going to be in the style of J.J. Abrams because I can't find the power adapter to the camcorder. Now originally I shot this video back in July. Unfortunately, when I was doing post-production work on it, the computer I do video editing on basically suffered a hard drive failure, and I lost both this review as well as the Warthog review. And seeing that I only really have time to go back and do one of those two reviews at the moment, I chose the X55 because that's what I get asked about the most often. It is the newest HOTAS, and its budgetary price puts it within the budget of this holiday season for a lot of users. Now, I've already done my 2014 HOTAS Buyer's Guide, which I still recommend the CH HOTAS if available to you over this, with two notable exceptions, and that is if you play a lot of DCS or Falcon BMS, basically jet flight simulators, or if you're in a country or part of the world where acquiring CH gear is either prohibitively expensive, as expensive if not more than a Warthog, or is just simply not available, and usually the X55 would be available in many of those markets. So my overall impression is this. I really do like this stick in BMS as well as DCS. Now, I'll still use my CH gear for Falcon 4 BMS because flying an F-16 is a single engine fighter, so having the dual throttles really doesn't help a whole lot in that game unless you're doing mods. But in the DCS games with either A10C or F-15C, where you have dual engines, it's a really, really good option. Now, I've also played Elite Dangerous as well as the latest revisions, I think 0.9, 0.2, 0.1, 0.2 at this point, of Arena Commander and Star Citizen, and I really didn't find it working quite as well for the space sims as I did for the flight sims. So if you're looking for a joystick that's equally kind of good across a whole gambit of flight and space combat simulators, I still recommend the CH over this product if you can get it. But if you're a DCS junkie and you're looking for an affordable alternative to the Thrustmaster Warthog, there's some things here you might wish to consider. Now, I'm kind of glad that this video did wait a little bit because now we have 6-8 months worth of more data on quality control feedback, and it looks like the X55 series as a whole suffers from a lot of the same quality control issues that have plagued the X52 now for several years. A lot of people having to RMA throttles because they break, and I can tell you why they do here in a minute. But let's just kind of get into an overview of the features of the stick and throttle. So I'm going to go over here so you can see a little bit better. This stick overall is actually not too bad. I found its accuracy and precision was decent. Now I've got the default factory spring. It does come with other springs, so you can either increase or decrease the amount of tension there depending on what your personal preference would be. It is a Hall effect sensor stick. It was nowhere near as bad as what the X52 was out of the box, so no magnet mods required. Stick does feature twist. I don't particularly like twist on my joysticks for yaw and things like that. I still would prefer to use rudder pedals in flight sims, but it is an option there. You don't have to have rudder pedals with this. You get a single action button here, another one up here, another one on the side, and then down here you get this red button here, this kind of trigger button there, as well as a single action or a single stage trigger here. Now this is probably the biggest difference between the Thrustmaster Warthog and the X55. The Thrustmaster Warthog and the X52 as well had a dual stage trigger. This is a single stage trigger, but you could map this to be stage 1, stage 2. So stage 1, stage 2. So there are all alternatives around it, but much like the CH fighter stick up there, which also only has a single stage button or a single stage trigger. So you have another button up here, single action. You have an 8-way POV hat switch here, another 8-way switch here, and a third 8-way switch here. Now, you'll notice that the styling on this is very similar to the styling here, but this is a 4-way hat. And I find that it's very easy to actually go and hit up and to the left, or up and to the right in this case, than it is just to manipulate the four-way articulation. I mean, that's kind of a danger of any of the 8-way hat switches. It's very easy that you think you're hitting up, but you're actually hitting up and to the right or up to the left. So sometimes it causes manipulation errors, essentially, and user error. But overall, I like the stick. I still think I like the CH fighter stick a little bit better, but it is a vast improvement over the X52. Moving over here to the throttle. The throttle is probably where I have the most complaints about. Starting with this. Here's your mode selector switch. Now, one of the things that the X52 got right was prior, on the X52, the mode selector was right here. You could change the mode on your stick and throttle simply by manipulating a roller dial or rotary dial over here without having to take your hands off the throttle of the stick. Here, if you need to switch modes, you have to take your hand off the throttle or the stick in order to do it. So that is one feature I don't like. That's why I say that I classify this as a jet fighter sim stick instead of a space combat game stick, because in games like Star Citizen and to a certain extent also Elite Dangerous, because of the twitchiness of some of the combat, you need to be able to rapidly move across, buttons and manipulate controls and things like that, and maybe switch to different modes very quickly. Whereas in a game like a DCS or a BMS, where it's a much more slower-paced experience, you generally would have time to switch from air to air to air, or navigation to air to air-to-ground modes, if that's how you had things mapped. So that's one thing I don't like about it. The other thing I don't like, although I understand why this is I wish these were actual, off, and then you flip it and it stays on, stays off. The reason why it's not is because software and games and stuff like that recognize button presses, and it's much easier to get this to be recognized as a button press as opposed to an actual toggle switch. So that's why all of these switches are basically toggles, and you've got, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those. You got 2 rotary dials here. Again, I've not found a very wide range of uses for games in games like Star Citizen and things like that. However, this is extremely useful for games like Falcon BMS and DCS, where you need to adjust volumes of, say, your missile growl and maybe communications channels and things like that. Those are 2 very, very handy things. One thing I don't particularly like about this throttle, I have this dial that's tension down, wound down. You can adjust the tension right here as far as it'll go. And it still takes quite a bit of force in order to maneuver this throttle. It also doesn't have a very wide range of motion. And now we're seeing another problem. Because of how much tension and force it takes to maneuver this throttle, it has a tendency, especially when I'm pulling it back, to move. For going forward, it doesn't seem to be so bad, but I also have this little stock block up here, so that helps as well. But moving it back, the entire base of the unit tends to move with it. Now, I believe there's either drill holes here that if you have a, desk made out of 2x4s and plywood, as I do, if I was going to be using this stick full time, I would probably anchor it down with bolts or with screws to the desk so it wouldn't do that. So that's probably one of my biggest complaints, is just the amount of force. I mean, if I dial this force knob up, it takes a lot of effort. And as a result, in games like Elite Dangerous, when I'm using my CH Pro throttle here, it's a lot of times full throttle. Now I want to go, back to 0 throttle, and I need to make very quick adjustments because it's a little bit more twitchy. Here, I'm not going to make a rapid adjustment to my throttle, even if I put the tension down all the way. Now, I can understand why the throttle oftentimes breaks, and you'll see that it usually will break like right here or right there. And the reason behind that is people are probably applying so much force to it that they're literally just breaking it. They're breaking the plastic. Now, you can pull out this lock, and then you can manipulate each throttle independently. So if you have multiple engines, like in an F-15 or an A-10, you can do that. It has this, basically this is a mouse scroll wheel here. On this side of the throttle here, we have this little rocker switch. At first I thought it was an 8-way switch or a 4-way switch, but nope, it's a 2-way up and down rocker switch, which is kind of different. You got 2 buttons here. It has a lot more buttons than, say, the X52 did. You can depress that. That's a button. This is a rotary trim dial. Again, that's what makes this very useful, and it does have some stop points in it, some detents. So you can kind of set a 0 position. And this is very handy for a flight game. You can trim out elevator and ailerons, rudder, whatever you need to, right there. You'll see this in an F-16 and other real actual aircraft. However, again, in space combat games, I'm not sure how useful this really is. You got a slider here. I guess it is. Yeah, it's a slider. And then, if I can get in here, you have an 8-way hat switch here, another 8-way hat switch there, a button, and then a mouse nipple, much like the X52's mouse nipple. And you can actually manipulate or use this to control your strafing thrusters in games like Star Citizen or Elite Dangerous, but it has the same problem as using a hat switch, unlike the full analog mini stick here on the CH, which will allow me to thrust just a little bit or a lot, and I can control the maneuver, the amount of thrust I'm given. This is going to be a all or nothing, so I'm either going to be thrusting at 100% or 0% and nothing in between. So comparing it to the CH, and also the amount of desk space that the X55 takes up is just massive compared to, well, my CH gear. I mean, here's my CH Pro throttle here, and I don't know if I can get out of the way. Kind of put that next to it and kind of show you kind of about at the end of the limit of where the cable will go on that. Move my headset and track IR stuff out of the way. So, you know, it's a much larger stick, yet, you know, the amount of maneuvering room I have on here versus here as far as the throw goes, it seems like it's less on here. It seems like I have slightly less area to manipulate. It does have numbers, you know, what's its thrust, how much thrust you're doing right there, but I never look at them. I doubt most other people do either. And then if you want to combine the two and use it as a single throttle, you can then lock it back into place. So that's kind of the X55 in a nutshell. There is a lot of functionality here. Its software, though, really sucks. I mean, the X55 Rhino Mad Cat software, if I pull it up here, it's easier to use, I think, than the X52's, but nonetheless, it's still awful. Hopefully there you can see it a little bit better. It's nothing compared to CH Control Manager or even Target, which actually I've got running for the multifunction displays at the moment. You know, compare the basis over here, you know, the CH compared to the X55. The X55 base is a little bit taller and longer. Now again, I've not had a problem with the stick moving, even using lots of movement and stuff like that. But the throttle, if I were going to use this throttle full time, I would be cutting me off another piece of molding and basically placing it back here in order to hold this thing in place as I pull back and forward. So that's kind of my biggest complaint with the X55 is really the throttle. I wasn't as super impressed as I thought I was going to be. Well, that's pretty much the review of the X55 HOTAS. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.